Hello, my name is Calvin Redding with the team here at Innovar Healthcare. We're going to talk a little bit today about our BridgeLink 26.3 release that just came out, some of the updates, fixes, and features in that product. Let's go ahead and take a look. First thing you'll notice is new version numbering. So it's the year dot the month, I guess technically the last two digits of the year. So the most recent release is now 26.3. Since we finished up in March, that's month 3, so it's 26.3. Makes it a little bit easier to determine the age of the version you're running because now it's connected to a specific point in time. Some interesting numbers. It's our 5th release so far. We've got about 42,000 lines of code added just for this release, so quite a bit of lifting there, with about 54,000 since we started this endeavor. And we've also removed about 8,000 lines for some optimizations. So you can see there quite a bit of effort was put into this specific release. Now, it was released back on April 7th, so it's been out for a little over a week. Now, this is a foundational release. Foundational releases are typically about bug fixes and maintenance and libraries, dependencies, that kind of important but not necessarily exciting stuff. We did sneak a couple features in here that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Let's first talk about those dependencies. So from the top, we had a huge one, Jetty, moved up to version 12. That was on version 9 prior, so quite a dramatic improvement, leap forward there. Lots of stability and security patches there. We've also updated Log4j2, the, of course, logging library, up to version 2.25.3. Lots of security patches, hardening, that sort of stuff in there. Quartz, the internal scheduling system, moved up to 2.5.2, so there's some bug fixes and compatibility in there. And then most of the SQL drivers are updated. Postgres, SQLite, Oracle, and Derby all moved up to some more modern versions. So again, maybe not necessarily exciting things, but they're important in terms of the security and performance of the product, and it helps keep those security folks off your back. Getting those nasty emails about outdated libraries, you should get a little less of that. Now, I did mention we snuck a few features in here. First, a couple small ones. So the SMTP sender now supports OAuth 2.0 authentication and has a kind of an integrated token management feature that caches them and automatically refreshes. Kind of convenient. A small change made to the HTTP listener. You can now configure the request header size. We ran into some situations where we had some unusually large headers and realized it didn't work because we couldn't modify it. So we added a feature to do that. Now, a more substantial feature added was version history. So this used to be a standalone plugin. This is now integrated into the core product. So no more zipped download, no more plugin shenanigans. It's just all baked in, so it's nice and convenient and easy to use. Now, we did not merely just merge the plugin into the core product. We also added a bunch of new features for this as well. Let's take a look at those. From the top, so you can now search when you're importing from the repo, meaning there's no more just scrolling. You can type in something to search for and find it. Global scripts are included now as part of the versioning, like channels and everything else that's included, so they're saved and tracked as well. We also added support for personal access tokens. So this is a situation where if your GitLab instance does not have SSH enabled, how do you authenticate? It's kind of an alternate way of authenticating. We now support that as well. When you're doing a commit, there's now an option to do a batch commit, so you can see all the local changes and then push them all at one time. Noticing a trend here, kind of some creature comforts, things to make your life a little easier. The auto commit message now includes the channel name and ID. So when you're looking through your Git history, it's more readable, it's more evident what those commits were for. The code templates are now organized by library, and you can view that both on the import screen and in GitHub. Again, just makes it easier to read. Prior, that was just kind of a flat list, which was a little more challenging to navigate. A couple updates to our commercial plugins. Our SSL Manager was upgraded to version 3.1. Lots of new features in here. The first one has to do with certificate validation modes. So we have the same default behavior that it used to have, what used to be the only kind of behavior, which is PKIX chain validation. So that's still the behavior in here, but now it's the default behavior alongside two other options. I will mention as I go through some of these features, nothing we're talking about today will impact your existing configuration, so it won't change the way your channels or connectors work today. It's all opt-in. The new mode added is pinned leaf certificate. So you can pin, so to speak, a specific leaf cert, and then only those particular certs are actually trusted at runtime. So that's handy if you have a high security kind of zero trust environment. You have the option to select just those. We've also added a third option, which is trust all. So that's really intended for development or testing. It doesn't do any validation. And the thinking there is maybe you want to kind of do the configuration and implementation first, that kind of plumbing, data work, and then come back and deal with the certificates at the end. You can do that now, meaning you're not obligated to have working certs at the beginning of that testing process. We've also added support for certificate revocation checking. So do you want to know if a certificate's been revoked since it was issued? There's a couple different options of how to do this. The default mode is disabled, so it won't check at all. You have OCSP only, so OCSP being the live check. You have CRL only, which is the cached list. That's a little bit faster because it's all local. And then you can do a hybrid of both. So you can do a live check with OCSP that falls back to CRL if it can't make a connection out there to the server. And again, like the other things I mentioned before, this is opt-in only, so it won't affect any existing configurations. We've also added support for certificate expiration notifications. So by default, this will alert you 30 days in advance. That's a customizable window, so if you want to increase it to 45 days or 60 days or whatever, you can do that. It'll run every day, and it's going to check all the server, client, and trust store certs that you have. And you'll notice here in the screenshot, you have different options for notifications, dashboard alerts, emails. Do you want to print in the system event log? That kind of thing. So no more, surprise. All your certificates are expired. You'll know in advance that that's coming. On the listener side only, we've added a subject or SAN policy filter. So it's a simple regular expression pattern you can specify. It will look for those terms in those fields in the subject DN and SANs, and if it finds them, it'll allow it. So it's kind of a little more free-form way to do some extra security in here if that's something you want to do. A few smaller changes. TLS 1.1 is disabled by default. Again, it won't change a channel that already has it enabled, but going forward, it's turned off by default. You now have to specify a password to export certificates. That didn't used to be the case. We've added support for some more kinds of private keys, specifically PKCS 8 and 12. And you can also now export the Java key store. So if you want to do it for a backup or a migration, something like that, that's a supported feature. This will happen back in February, but I do want to mention it because it's been a little while since we met with the community. Our advanced access control, another commercial plugin, did have some changes made. It was updated to support our lookup manager, aka the dynamic lookup gateway. That's included now. There are also some smaller bug fixes and security improvements we made to that plugin as well. I want to pivot into something else for a minute. One of the things that's held back the product a little bit over time has been the way you interact with it, right? There's the classic UI, the Java Swing UI. It's kind of an anachronism from another time in many respects. You have to have this client to get into the system, and we have the administrator launcher, which is a little better than it used to be. You can save connections and stuff, and that's sort of better, but you still have to install the software. You have to cache every time. It's kind of resource intensive. It kind of requires you to use a desktop computer. It's old, it's slow, it's relatively unappealing. It's kind of an old technology. And so we went to the drawing board and decided, thought about what can we do to fix this. And so we began work on a web-based administrator that we call WebAdmin. And we internally kind of had a first release. We tested where it was read-only, and that was better, right? It had a more appealing look, and you could click and view things and kind of poke around, but you couldn't really be productive without the full write access. Creating channels, writing transformers, filters, database connections, code templates. It's not very productive. So we went back to work, and we decided basically we're not going to release it unless it does everything. So we went back, and our crack engineering team did months of work and kind of finished the remaining functionality. And we're now proud to announce our beta. We're working on internally on a beta of this WebAdmin, short for Web Administrator. And we can go ahead and take a look now at some kind of features and how it looks and how it works. So when you log in, you'll see a UI like this. Now, I do want to mention that this is a beta product, right? So some of the things we'll look at, the UI elements, colors, locations of things, that sort of stuff. You might see a little bit of variation there between this and the final product, but it's going to be something very, very similar to this. So right now I'm in dark mode. I'm going to flip this over to light mode for a minute. That's how most of us will start. So we have kind of a fresh take on a familiar UI, right? So it's still the dashboard. I see there's one channel deployed in here, and there's lots of small changes, right? I can see there's an icon here, a green circle instead of the word started for the status column. I can see I can expand this here, and there's different connectors we can look at, and we'll look at some messages in a minute. I have some familiar stats, right? The revision delta and the received and sent counts, but if I look closer, I start to notice some things that are new. We now have a received count over hour, queued count over hour, errored count over hour. So that's kind of reading some data from our message trends functionality. Some investments we've made in the product are now beginning to yield fruit with some new features. I'm going to jump into channels for a minute and deploy a TCP listener channel. And I'm going to do this because when I deploy this, we'll look at the channels view in just a second. I want to point out that this port number column now is populated. So if you have a channel that's listening on a TCP port, now you can see the port number in here. Something people have wanted for a really long time. Now that's in here as well. Got some buttons here that are new. There's an ability to control your columns if you want to see different stuff here. There's kind of a little download button here that grabs a snapshot of what the stats are at any particular state in time. Some familiar buttons down here if I want to turn the groups off, or I want to switch to current lifetime statistics, turn off labels, that kind of stuff. But you'll also notice down here at the very bottom we have a toolbar. And this toolbar, if I were to select a channel, lets me interact with that channel. I can view the messages for it, send messages, stop, start it, pause it, that kind of stuff, undeploy it. But you'll notice there's these little dots here. So for the first time ever, we've had added the capability for you to do some customization. That's really never been part of the product before. So I can move this toolbar around to the top or bottom or one of the sides, kind of whatever is convenient for you. I prefer mine down at the bottom here. That's usually where I put it. But now you have a little bit more control as a user. Now I want to point out some other things while we're here. I kind of touched on this a second ago, but there's both a dark and a light mode here. So if you want to switch to something less eyeball melting, you have this built in as well. Kind of a nice feature there. There's also a compactness setting here. So I can make things smaller or bigger. This is the smallest, largest, and then back to where we started. Normally I run mine at the smallest. I kind of prefer that, but whatever size you like, you can use that here. Let's go ahead and jump into look at some messages for a minute. So I can simply double click the name of a channel here the same way I could in the classic UI, and I can view messages, right? And let's just pick one at random here. I'll look at this. Now you'll notice a bunch of things happening here. We have a different style of view. We're showing the message content over on the right? I can do the raw copy, transformed, whatever. I can turn text wrapping on or off if I like. I have pretty printing on or off if I like. So there's a little bit new functionality there. Now, if you don't like seeing this message over here on the right, it's really no problem. You can hit this button here, this columns view, and that's gonna, I apologize, that's the wrong button. This button right here, the bottom layout button. If I hit that, it'll flip out the message down below. So that's kind of how the UI has historically looked. You can switch back to something like that. And as we look closer, you'll notice more and more kind of little optimizations. So for example, if you look at the way these connector messages, these lines are organized, in the classic Swing UI, it kind of has that alternating gray and white background for each row, which is fine for readability, but it doesn't really signal to you that all of these connector messages are grouped together as part of a message. And of course, I'm alluding to some things happening down in the Java API there. But there's some visual distinctions like this throughout WebAdmin that are kind of nice in terms of the way data is represented and accuracy and clarity and all of that. Now, I did mention this is a fully featured product. We can do anything we can do in the Swing UI. Let's go ahead and jump into channels for just a moment here. And let's go ahead and look at this view just for a second. It's very familiar. It's a little bit styled like the dashboard. It's got the green icon for enabled, disabled, that sort of thing. You have some new columns with more information. But if you're accustomed to the channels view, this should look pretty familiar, right? Let's go ahead and open up our webinar demo channel just for a moment here. Now you'll notice this is a new view. We've never seen this before. What's going on here? So this is what we call the flow view. And the flow view allows you to kind of see more information in less space. What do I mean? So we have our connectors over here on the left. Notice the source connector, this channel reader, we have some icons here. So it tells me there's a filter. If I mouse over here, there's a transformer. I can see down on my first destination, queuing is enabled. So before, in the kind of classic UI, you had to kind of tab through some different tabs or actually select a connector in the case of destinations in order to actually be able to see anything, filters, transformers, kind of see what's going on. And I've grown to like this view quite a bit. I think it's pretty convenient. Now, having said that, if you'd like to switch back to the kind of classic style, we call that tab view. I can click this button up here, and we have something a little more familiar looking. And if I pop over to like the source tab, now there's still some changes. Filters and transformers are up here at the top, not on the side, but a little more familiar. In particular, if I go to the destinations tab, this is a lot more like what we're probably accustomed to. So again, you're not obligated to use flow view. It's really up to you. But the idea being you have a little more control over your preferences and kind of what you like and how you want to work. Now, while we're in here, let's go ahead and let's create a transformer for a second. We'll do it in the source connector. And I have a message template loaded here already. Let's say that we'll do something simple. How about I want to copy the contents of PID 3.1 to PID 2.1? We could do something like that. So I'll come over here to add step. We'll go ahead and do it in JavaScript. I can give it a name here, something like that. And I can go into the message trees. I can grab some of these E4X references, right? We'll go down to PID 2.1. I'll drag and drop that down. I do need to remove, I apologize. I chose the wrong thing, didn't I? Let's go ahead and try that one more time. I should know better. There we go. PID 2.1, and we can remove that toString there. And we'll say equals, what is it going to be pulled from? We're going to copy it from PID 3.1, like so. We'll add a semicolon to finish that. So we're just going to copy the data from one field to another, no big deal. Let's go ahead and deploy this. Now, one thing nice here, you can save and deploy at the same time. It used to take a little bit of extra clicking back in the old UI. Now you can do it all at once. So we'll go ahead and save and deploy. Of course, it takes us back to the dashboard automatically. And I can go ahead and go in here to the send message tool. And let's grab an ADT message here. I happen to have one handy. Again, note before we send this in, PID2 is not populated. Let's process this through. I'll go ahead and open up the channel once again here. There's our message, and if I jump over to the transformed copy, let's scroll down here to PID2. Sure enough, there's our field. And of course, if I look at the encoded version going out of the connector, it's going to be there as well. So a very simple demonstration, nothing sophisticated there, but just demonstrating that this does have the full functionality of the Swing UI, the classic UI. It's not just a demonstration tool. It has all the functionality you'd expect it to have. That's going to wrap up most of our demonstration for today on how this works. Just a sample of the things to come. It's something that we're really excited about, and you're going to see more from this in the future. We'll be kind of doing a closed beta here soon with a release to come up a little bit later in the year. Before we wrap up today, a couple more things I do want to mention for everybody here. That was our conclusion of the WebAdmin demo, of course. Just to wrap up, to remember what the purpose of this is. So it's web-based, it's fully featured, no desktop client needed, it's secure by default because it uses the same API that the old administrator uses, the same API, same HTTPS. As I said several times, it's a fresh take on a familiar workflow, and it's quite a bit faster. And as I mentioned, that will be in beta soon at our website. Before we wrap up today, I do want to mention we do have some training available now. We have our BridgeLink Essentials class coming up in New Orleans this year. There's a little bit of availability left in that. We will have some additional dates available soon as well, and we'll be posting information about those to come. We won't really have a community Q&A because, of course, this is a recording. But I do want to mention that we want you to participate in our Slack community and on Reddit. And there's links for both of those on our website that you can use to participate. We'd love to see you there as well. If you have any questions, reach out to us on our Slack page, and we'll be happy to answer those. It's good to see you all, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day.